If you think you know the limits of male betrayal, prepare yourself. This story will shake your certainties about how far a man can go to destroy us, and how a 58-year-old woman transformed the biggest lie of her life into the most liberating truth. Subscribe to the channel if you believe no. Woman should accept less than she deserves. Because stories like this need to be told to inspire, not to hurt. Wait, I shouted, rising from the burgundy velvet chair. I need to see him one last time. The silence at the wake weighed like lead. 20 people stared at me as I walked toward the coffin, my footsteps echoing on the cold marble. The dark-haired woman who had been crying since the beginning of the ceremony shrank even more, hiding her face as if I carried some curse. I leaned over that face I should have known better than my own. 23 years of marriage. 5 years of divorce. I looked for the small scar on his left wrist, the one he said he got at 10 years old falling off his bike. It wasn't there. This man is not Richard, my voice echoed through the chapel. This is not my ex-husband. My name is Catherine Williams, I'm 58 years old, and at that moment I discovered that even when we think we know the end of the story, life can still surprise us in unimaginable ways. I didn't come into this world to be invisible. I came to leave my mark, even when they tried to erase my existence. During our marriage, Richard was always controlling, manipulative. But I never imagined he would take his lies so far. The call informing me of his death in a car accident came on an ordinary Tuesday. I didn't love him anymore, but 23 years of history don't disappear with divorce papers. I decided to go to the funeral out of respect for what we once were. The ceremony was strangely empty. Few familiar faces, whispers too low. But she caught my attention. That woman in black who cried as if the world had ended and avoided my gaze like a guilty child. After my scream, chaos ensued. The funeral director tried to calm me, talking about grief stress. But I insisted. I demanded documents, certificates, anything that would prove who was in that coffin. The truth came in painful pieces. The man in the coffin was named Thomas Mitchell, a homeless man who had died alone. Richard was alive, living 2 hours away with a new identity. The woman in black, was Isabella, his new wife of 4 years. They had forged his death to receive the life insurance that I, naively, still maintained in my name. $500,000 that would finance their new life while I mourned a ghost. You know what hurt me most? It wasn't the betrayal. It was discovering that for 5 years I blamed myself for our marriage's failure. 5 years believing that maybe I hadn't been woman enough. 5 years carrying guilt that was never mine. When the world tried to break me, I rebuilt myself. Not with anger, but with intelligence. Not with revenge, but purpose. The police investigation revealed that Richard had tried this scam before, with another woman in another state. Isabella discovered she was married to a professional criminal, and that her own savings had disappeared. When Richard was arrested for fraud and conspiracy, something inside me awakened. Not anger, something much more powerful. Clarity. I learned that true strength isn't in screaming, but in surviving with dignity. Each scar tells a story. Each silent tear is an act of resistance. I used every recovered penny to open my first coffee shop. Then the second. Today I have 3 thriving establishments and employ 15 women, most of them starting over after difficult divorces. Each chapter of my life was a lesson. Each challenge, an opportunity for growth. Isabella? She appeared at my door 6 months later, crying, asking forgiveness, saying she didn't know anything. I hired her as manager of the 3rd shop. She turned out to be an honest woman who, like me, was a victim of his lies. My voice is my weapon, my story, my revolution. When they told me I couldn't, I proved I could. When they tried to silence me, I screamed louder, not with words, but with actions. Today, at 58, I understand that the best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's discovering who you really are when you stop living in the shadow of someone else's lies. When people ask me how I overcame all this, I answer, I stopped being the victim of his story and became the hero of my own life. And if you were in my place, how would you react? Stories like mine need to be told, not to hurt, but to inspire. To show that no woman needs to accept less than she deserves. Because sometimes you have to bury a ghost to finally be able to live for real. If you think discovering the truth was the hardest part, wait until I tell you about the day I looked into his eyes for the first time in 5 years. Richard's arrest happened on a rainy Thursday. I was in my first coffee shop, serving coffee to Mrs. Rose, an 82-year-old lady who came every day to tell stories of her youth. When my phone rang, "Mrs. Williams, we arrested Richard Thompson. He confessed everything." At that moment, I felt something I didn't expect. It wasn't relief. It was a strange sense of emptiness, as if for 5 years I had carried a heavy backpack and suddenly someone had taken it off my shoulders. But the real test came 2 weeks later, when I received an unexpected call. "Catherine," his voice tremulous after so long, "I need to talk to you. Please." Against all advice, I decided to go. Not for him, for me, because I needed to look into the eyes of the man who had made me believe I was crazy and say exactly what I thought of him. The prison visiting room smelled of disinfectant and despair. When he entered in the orange uniform and handcuffs, I barely recognized him. The Richard I knew was always impeccable, controlled. This man before me looked like a ghost of what he was. "I know you. Hate me," he began, without looking me in the eyes. "No," I replied, surprising us both. "I don't hate you, Richard. I pity you." He raised his head, confused. "For 23 years, I believed you were a man. Today, I discovered you were always just a scared boy, running from your own responsibilities. And you know what else? I thank you." "Thank me?" "For freeing me from a life that wasn't mine. For showing me I was much stronger than I imagined. For forcing me to discover who I really am when I stopped living in your shadow." I stood up to leave, but before going, I turned one last time. "I forgive you, Richard. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to live free from the weight of resentment." Starting over at 58 isn't easy, but I discovered that age isn't an obstacle, it's an advantage. Because at 58, you know exactly who you are and what you're capable of. In the first months after Richard's arrest, I woke up every morning with a strange feeling. For the first time in decades, my life belonged completely to me. There was no one else telling me what to think, how to act, or who I should be. It was terrifying and liberating. With the money recovered from the insurance, I decided to do something I always wanted, but Richard always discouraged: open my own business. "You don't have experience, Catherine. This is too risky for our age." His words echoed in my mind, but now they sounded different. Not like truths, but like his fears projected onto me. My first coffee shop was born in a small space on a busy downtown street. I called it Second Chapter, because that's what it was for me, the chance to write a new story. In the first days, I served coffee with trembling hands, not from fear, but from pure emotion. Each customer who entered, each thank you I received, each genuine smile was a small victory against the voice in my head that still whispered I wasn't capable. Mrs. Rose was my first regular customer. 82 years old, widowed for 15, full of stories and wisdom. One day, as I cleaned tables with tears in my eyes, because being strong all the time is exhausting, she held my hand. "Child, I've lived long enough to know that starting over isn't about erasing the past. It's about planting flowers where there were once only ashes." Her words became the unofficial motto of the coffee shop. And gradually, other women began to appear. Women who, like me, were rewriting their stories. Women who had lost husbands, jobs, dreams, but who refused to lose themselves. The coffee shop became more than a business. It became a sanctuary. A place where mature women could be vulnerable without being judged as weak. Where we could celebrate our scars as survival medals. In 6 months, I opened the second shop. In 1 year, the third. The revenge I thought I wanted transformed into something much more powerful. The conscious choice not to allow bitterness to poison my new beginning. Isabella appeared at the door of my third coffee shop on an October morning, 6 months after Richard's arrest. I recognized her immediately. The woman in black from the fake funeral. Only now she looked much younger and much more scared. "Mrs. Williams?" Her voice trembled. "I know you have no reason to listen to me, but..." For a moment I felt the old anger rise up my throat. This was the woman who had participated in the farce that almost destroyed me. The woman who had lived with my money, slept in the bed bought with my sacrifices, built a life on the ruins of mine. But then I looked into her eyes and saw something familiar. The same lost look I had for years. The look of a woman who had believed Richard's lies. "Come in," I said, surprising us both. For 2 hours, Isabella told me her version of the story. How Richard had appeared in her life as a sad widower, mourning the wife who had died of cancer. How he was caring, attentive, everything she had always dreamed of in a man. How he convinced her that the funeral was just a legal formality to close insurance matters. "I never knew you were alive," she cried. "He showed me false death certificates, edited photos of you in a hospital." I believed I was consoling a man in mourning. For years, Richard had made me question my own sanity. Now I discovered he had done the same with Isabella. We were both victims of the same emotional predator. "He took all my savings," she continued. "My house, my car, even my grandmother's jewelry. When the police arrested him, I discovered our marriage was also false. I have nothing, Mrs. Williams, and nowhere to go." At that moment, I made a decision that shocked even me. "Do you have experience in administration?" She blinked, confused. I worked in offices for 15 years before meeting Richard. "I need a manager for this shop. The work is honest, the salary is fair, and you'll have the chance to rebuild your life. Interested?" Isabella broke into tears. "Why? Why would you help me after everything?" "Because I learned that true strength isn't in destroying those who hurt us. It's in building something better from the pain. And because we women need to support each other, not destroy each other." This decision changed my life in ways I never imagined. Because choosing forgiveness over revenge isn't a sign of weakness. It's the most powerful act a woman can do. Share if you've ever transformed an enemy into an ally. How did forgiveness change your life? Today, 5 years after that surreal funeral, I understand that some of life's greatest blessings come disguised as the worst betrayals. I look through the window of my 4th coffee shop. Yes, now there are 4. And see Isabella training our newest employee, Maria, a 63-year-old woman who lost her job due to restructuring. Translation, for being considered too old. Isabella became more than an employee. She's my partner, my friend, my living proof that forgiveness can be revolutionary. Together, we created a program that offers job opportunities for women over 50 who were discarded by the market. Our coffee shops employ 32 women. 17 of them started over after difficult divorces. 8 lost jobs due to age. 3 were single mothers who raised children alone and now have time to dream again. Each has a story. Each proves that we, mature women, are not obsolete. We're experienced. We're not disposable. We're indispensable. Mrs. Rose, now 87, still comes every day. She became our official life stories consultant. She's the one who talks to new customers who arrive with broken hearts, offering tea and wisdom in equal doses. "Child," she told me last week, "do you know the difference between a young woman and a mature woman?" "What, Mrs. Rose?" "The young woman dreams of what she can become. The mature woman knows what she's already achieved and uses that to achieve even more." Richard? He was released 2 years ago. He tried to contact me once, wanting to talk and explain. I politely declined. Not from anger. I genuinely don't feel anger toward him anymore. But because my life is mine now, and there's no room in it for ghosts from the past, I discovered that the best revenge isn't making someone pay for what they did to you. It's building a life so full that you thank them for freeing you to live it. If you've made it this far in my story, I want you to remember one thing. No matter your age, no matter how many times you've had to start over, no matter how many people doubted you, you have the right to rewrite your story as many times as necessary. Leave a like if this story inspired you to believe in your own new beginnings. Subscribe for more stories of women who transformed their wounds into strength. Comment your own reconstruction story. Let's create a support network among women who refuse to accept less than they deserve. Because sometimes you have to bury a ghost to finally be able to live for real. And sometimes the most dangerous women in the world are those who finally stopped believing the lies and started trusting their own truth. This was my silent revolution. What will yours be?